I'm going to say something that others are going to find controversial, but I thought he was weak sauce. I thought he didn't try very hard, that he had an opportunity for massive change. After the 2008 collapse, people voted for change. He had an 83% approval rating after inauguration, which is unheard of. And then he did a Heritage Foundation plan on the Affordable Care Act and then took 7 years off.
7 years off? Come on, man. What are we talking about here?
What did he pass
the
after?
Iran nuclear agreement was an achievement.
Oh, no, that's a
Cuban
good one.
normalization was achievement. We're taking 7 years off?
I've always been curious, why didn't he push harder? Was it that there's too much pushback from the rest of the Democratic Party? He's worried about what mainstream media is going to say. What was it?
They were pushing hard on a lot of things. You have to remember that moment in time. It felt like we were on the brink of a cataclysmic economic event every single day. There was a lot of going on. I understand the criticism. I'm not like here to be totally defensive. There's a million things we did that I think were mistakes.
Great interview for you guys now. Tommy Vitor, he's founded a lot of things. So let's go through it all, and then we're kind of, in the old days, we used to be two different wings of the Democratic Party, but I don't know that we are anymore, so we'll have that discussion. But he's co-founder of Crooked Media, co-host of Pod Save America, host of Pod Save the World. He's saving a lot of things. His first book was Democracy or Else. Check that out. I want to talk about that. He worked for President Obama for 9 years, and including a stint at White House National Security spokesman, which is kind of badass. All right, Tommy, welcome back, brother.
Hey, it's great to see you.
Good to see you. All right, so I want to talk about the state of Democratic Party, state of media.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's good. We're covered. All right, that's a wrap. You know, your title of your book is Democracy or Else. Mm-hmm. So around, I guess, about a year before the debate, roughly speaking, at the Young Turks, we were saying, and we did a petition, and we did many other things from that. We think Biden's too old. We think that Biden's in the mid-30s in approval rating, and we're going to lose to Trump. So we have to get a new candidate. We were, blasted with derision and said that we support Trump and we're going to ruin democracy, etc. We were saying, no, we want to beat Trump. We want to beat him. And running a guy who's super unpopular is maniacal, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, has anyone learned any lessons from that, right? Like, because I feel like, yeah, they pretend to learn lessons, right? The Democratic leadership I'm talking about. But then the next time we'll have a primary, my guess is they'll go back to, bow your head. We anointed a leader. It's going to be a corporate Democrat as always. And if you don't support him, you support Trump and the Republicans. So that's my take on it. I'm curious what your take on it is.
My take on it is a few things. First of all, you guys are right. Anyone who criticized you for stating what frankly was obvious is the wrong word, because I wasn't leaning into it the way you guys were, and I wish I had been. But you guys were right to push for a primary after the one term of Biden. I think all of us expected that that's what he would do, right? I mean, he talked about being a bridge to the next generation, and then he went back on that promise, and it was incredibly frustrating. I think everyone just sort of felt stuck. I hope people are learning their lessons. For me, it's a bit of a litmus test. Like, if you're a serious person, I think you should be able to admit that it was a huge mistake for Joe Biden to run for re-election, and that suppressing debate and arguments and conversations like the one you guys were trying to have is not helpful for anyone. Like, I actually think that good, like big, messy primary processes are a good thing because we vet things out while there's still time to win the general election. But or have we learned our lesson yet? I don't know. It's not clear to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hope that we're all allies in actually pushing for democracy, not just in a general election, but in a primary, where you've got to pick the best candidate, the strongest candidate. So let's hope we do it right the next time around. So now let's talk about whether you think the Democratic Party has a sense that they should go populist, and this is super critical, and whether they have a sense that they should mean it, or like, I don't want it to just be like a charade. Oh yeah, now we're playing dress up populist. So what's your sense of that?
Well, what do you mean by mean it? I mean, I think they should focus on a big economic agenda that speaks to the cost of living, housing, the price of education, wages, the price of healthcare. I think those are the core things that people vote on every day, or care about when they go to the polls. I think that Democrats, sometimes we get caught up in talking about bigger picture, more high-minded things, like, democracy was sort of the focus at the end of the last election. I thought that was a mistake at the time. I think that's been kind of borne out. I think we're seeing a bunch of impressive populist candidates running right now, like Graham Plattner in Maine, for example. I'm really excited about those candidacies. I think Zohar Mamdani has shown that can be a winning path. And I think that, success begets success, right? And if those candidates win and they win big, and that those political paths are seen as successful, you will see more Democrats following suit. I think the challenge we've had is Republicans have successfully demagogued some issues that right-wing populists have had a lot of success demagoguing, like immigration. And I think that during the Biden administration, they had a point that the border had gotten out of control. And so I think we did need to speak to some of those concerns because they really had risen in salience among voters, and we had to just address those concerns,
Yeah, so let me give you some details and examples of what I mean by mean it. So I think Joe Biden's a liar. So I know I'm harsh, right? But we're having a conversation. You tell me in your language how you feel about it. So he said that he was in favor of minimum wage, higher wages, right? Because minimum wage is not just about minimum wage, it pushes up other wages, right? And that was the first thing he took out of the COVID relief bill. So didn't mean it at all. And then when Bernie did an amendment, he had the 2 Delaware senators vote against it. That's a clear sign that Biden was against the minimum wage increase. He said he was going to do public option, never even introduced it. They put paid family leave as a throwaway in one of the bills. They didn't get it. They never fought for it, even though it's at 84% approval rating. So I don't think Joe Biden's lying for no reason. I don't think Democratic leadership is lying for no reason. I think they're lying because they're corrupt. I think that they take money from corporate donors and they pretend to be in favor of popular policies and they never actually do them. So what am I missing?
I think that's true for some politicians. Like, I honestly, I do think I have a lot of things I'm really mad at Joe Biden about. I think he was horrendous on Gaza. I think he shouldn't have run for re-election. I think he was dishonest about that, and it's incredibly frustrating to me. I actually do think he wanted to raise the minimum wage. I forget all the details of that vote in question, and it was really frustrating at the time that they gave up that fight so quickly. But I'm with you. I also was frustrated that they didn't put forward some sort of healthcare plan that included a public option. I also, though, Cenk, when I think back to that 2020 primary and the debates, what I'm struck by when I think about those fights is how divorced they were from the political reality at the time. Like, remember, there was a big fight, not just about who was going to do Medicare for all, but who was going to implement it the fastest, right? That was kind of like that final battle between Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. And I think a lot of people who were like counting votes at the time knew that on no planet was that going to actually happen, right? So it's like, I'm fine for everyone fighting and talking about big, impactful ideas like that, but then we have to do the hard work of getting the representatives in place to actually get it done. You know what I mean? And I think that's where we've really failed.
No, see, but Tommy, look, on the one hand, I understand what you're saying about the math and all of that, right? So, and I don't want to get back into the minimum wage debate, but there's no question Biden took it out. He did not mean it at all. That's my opinion.
I believe you. I truly don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But I want to move on to the healthcare that you mentioned, right? So, see, that's another great example. So there's a couple of issues with healthcare. You're right, didn't have the votes for Medicare for all, even though it began with 70% popularity before almost all of the Republicans attacked it, and at least half of the Democrats attacked it, and all of cable news attacked it. So it went all the way down at one point to 55%, but still like easily more popular, right? But something that's even easier than that is negotiating drug prices. So it's mental not to negotiate drug prices. It's unheard of. Like, it's crazy. Literally no other country does it. It's the most anti-capitalist thing there is in the world. It's like communism for corporations, which makes no sense. So it's ludicrous. Yep. But we have no chance of doing that either. I mean, see, there's 2 parts of it. One is Biden said, "Oh, I'm going to do 1 drug," and then over a course of like a long time, 10 drugs. My opinion on that is, yeah, that's a cover story, so you get distracted from the fact that they are not doing it for tens of thousands of drugs, right? So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is the reason why they can't fix that provision is not just that the Republicans are 100% corrupt, which they are on that issue, but tons of Democrats. The majority of Democrats are also corrupt. They take money from big pharma. So that's why when President Obama went to go, do Affordable Care Act, he's like, well, I can't do the public option and I can't negotiate drug prices because big pharma owns this town. But nobody ever explains what does it mean that big pharma is too strong. It means they've bought enough corrupt Democrats and they bought the entire Republican Party, so we can't pass anything. So are we ever going to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is how deeply corrupt most of our politicians are?
You're right. Like, money in politics is the original sin. I think it is like the root of maybe not all evil, but most evils in our political system. It has blocked common sense things from happening, from negotiating over drug prices to banning machine guns from the streets of our cities. And I do think that we need to talk more about fixing that problem. I think Democrats really need a clear, concise reform agenda. I'm now old enough to remember the 2006 midterms when Democrats, I think, pretty successfully ran on that kind of reform agenda and cleaning up Washington and dealing with lobbyists and PAC money and all these scandals, the Jack Abramoff scandals that had happened at the time. I think that message gets greatly complicated when you have all this in the news about Hunter Biden, or when there's a lot of attention on members of Congress, including a lot of Democrats, trading stocks, right? Like, I think the fact that members of Congress can still buy and sell individual stocks and do so based on privileged information is insane. And I think Pelosi and a lot of other Democrats have a huge blind spot on this, and we have to fix it. So I'm with you, but it's like we have to practice what we preach and then put forward a big reform agenda that will actually address the problem.
Tommy, I'm worried that if we win in 2028, and we go back to the same old tricks and we don't do anything about money in politics or do window dressing. Oh, I banned a tiny little thing, right? But everybody's still getting bribed, right? Or we don't do minimum wage, we don't do anything on healthcare, that the country's going to despise us. Like, do people get that? I don't think that like, my sense of it is they get, oh, we should pretend to be populist. Oh, we should, pretend to be X, Y, or Z. But I don't know that it's sunk into Democratic, not just leadership like Schumer and Jeffries, but like the upper level of the Democratic Party. No, if you do what you did with Biden, and remember, because Tommy, I was saying Biden didn't do enough. This is not anywhere near enough. And I was getting back, no, he's FDR 2.0. We nailed it. So, like, if that mentality hasn't changed, they're going to destroy this party.
Listen, man, the FDR 2.0 stuff was like kind of eye-rolling, ridiculous spin from staffers to a president who for some reason needed to read that in the press. It was sort of embarrassing at the time. I think we all agree that that was silly. I think you have a point, which is that when you have a political system and a process that just doesn't deliver for people over and over and over again, it can only bend so far until it breaks. And I don't know what breaking looks like in this context, but it doesn't sound very good to me. So I'm with you. I think we have we have a huge gerontocracy problem in the Democratic Party that is still a challenge. It didn't go away with Joe Biden, and we have to fix it. And I think there is a frustration among a lot of rank and file Democrats that leadership is not necessarily meeting the moment, right? They tell us a lot about kind of creeping authoritarianism and Trump's a dictator and this and that. But it's like, so what are we doing about it? Well, Jeffries and Schumer are demanding a meeting. It doesn't feel like quite enough.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be followed up with a strongly worded letter. Okay.
Yes, always.
And a lot of those going out, including to Israel. And by my God, has that changed their policy? All right, so which then I'm going to come back to the media in a sec, but let's go to President Obama. So you worked for President Obama for a long time. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something that others were going to find controversial, but I thought he was weak sauce. I thought he didn't try very hard, that he had an opportunity for massive change after the 2008 collapse. People voted for change. He had an 83% approval rating after inauguration, which is unheard of. And then he did a Heritage Foundation plan on the Affordable Care Act and then took 7 years off. Okay, so
7 years off. Come on, man. What are we talking about here?
What did he pass
the Iran nuclear agreement was an achievement?
Oh, no, that's a good
normalization
one.
was achievement. We're taking 7 years off.
No, you're right. The Iran agreement was great, and we gave them a lot of credit for that. So Iran agreement, Affordable Care Act, Lilly Ledbetter.
Saving the auto industry, dealing with the financial crisis. Look, I understand the criticism. I'm not like here to be totally defensive. There's a million things we did that I think were mistakes that I'm happy to talk about. I think the entire Afghanistan surge was a mistake in sending more troops there and doubling down on a failed counterinsurgency strategy was a mistake. We should have ended that war earlier. That's actually an area where I imagine you, like me, give Joe Biden a lot of credit. As ugly as the end of the war in Afghanistan was, it was the right thing to do to end that war. And by the way, Donald Trump negotiated that agreement. I understand people look back at kind of the math in those early Obama days and think, Jesus Christ, he had 60 senators, he had this size majority in the House, like he could have done everything he wanted. There's some truth to that. But then there's also the fact that a lot of those senators in those days would have been Republicans now. They were pretty conservative people in red states like Nebraska or Louisiana or other places, and it was harder to get those votes. But I hear you. Look, I don't think he's perfect. I don't think the administration was perfect. There's a lot to criticize, and I'm happy to go there.
All right, two more things about Obama. So first of all, Tommy's right in that, you got to give credit where credit is due, and don't get stuck on like, I like Obama, I don't like Obama, I like Biden, I don't like Biden. No, Biden was right to withdraw from Afghanistan. Yeah, it was messy, but they were good. Anyone who withdrew from Afghanistan, corporate media was going to annihilate. Like if someone had a hangnail, they would be like, oh my God, we should have stayed for 20 more years. And Biden had courage to do that. And Obama was great on the Iran deal. That was probably the very best thing that he did. Okay, so now you said, but there's some truth to what I said. So let me ask you this. I don't know that you're going to agree to the premise, but like if I was advising Obama, let's just say hypothetical, right?
He'd love to.
Oh, he would have loved it, yes. I would have said, my God, brother, okay, you had 60, fine, at some point you went down to 59, but you got plenty. You got paid family leaves at 84%. So you can't get one Republican to vote. I mean, remember 74% of Republicans also want paid family leave, the voters do, right? And I would have had a million things that I would have said, please, you have this moment, push harder, right? But he didn't. So I've always been curious, why didn't he push harder? Was it that there's too much pushback from the rest of the Democratic Party? He's worried about what mainstream media is going to say. What was it?
I mean, I think they were pushing hard on a lot of things. I mean, there was a lot of, like you have to remember that moment in time. It felt like there was we were on the brink of a cataclysmic economic event every single day. I mean, I've lost count of the number of meetings I was in where people were like, this time, sir, we think the global economy is going to crash because the Greek government has been lying about its debt for like 20 years, and it's all crumbling down as we speak, right? So there was a lot of going on. I think it's a fair criticism to say that we waited way too long on working to try to get a bipartisan group to pass the Affordable Care Act instead of just ramming it through via reconciliation. There was a lot of effort put into recruiting kind of a last few holdout Republicans in this effort to like actually engage both parties, to come together, to get people to work together in good faith, when in reality, the entire plan the whole time was Mitch McConnell saying we are going to block every single thing this guy does and try to make him a failure and get to the midterms. So I think, were there some sort of bite-sized things we could have peeled off and passed faster? You're probably right. It was a long time ago. I don't remember sort of like every cut and thrust of that moment, but I take the criticism in good faith. I really do.
Yeah. All right, last thing on Obama. And I love this honest conversation. Like, in the old days, this is hard to do. Everybody was dug into their camps, but we got to do this accounting. Otherwise, we're not going to get to the right answer. So President Obama did defy Israel on the Iran deal, and that was a great deal because we got uranium out of Iran and they couldn't develop nukes. It was enormously successful. And I think that the Israeli lobby didn't want it because they wanted a war. They didn't want peace. And the fact that President Obama defied them and went for peace instead, I give him enormous credit for. This is my third time saying it just in this interview, right? But on everything else, President Obama, like all other presidents, Democrat or Republican, blank check. What Israel wants, Israel gets. Okay, my answer again is just like with big pharma and big oil and defense contractors, it's the money, Lebowski. So they have, they give money to President Obama and the rest of Congress. So that's why Obama went along.
I don't think it was the money. I personally, I don't think it was like AIPAC money. I don't think that like they weren't the biggest fans of ours. They were never the biggest fans of Barack Obama. So I don't really think it was that. Look, he comes into office, Bibi Netanyahu becomes prime minister. There were a lot of people who were kind of selling this idea that Netanyahu, as a right-wing kind of hawkish guy, was the kind of leader who could make tough choices and cut a peace deal. And so we engaged in this negotiations process early on. I think it was like 2009 and 2010 that ultimately failed. And then later on, John Kerry engaged in another ultimately fruitless negotiation process over a two-state solution. That failed. You're right that in the interim, the US did what the US has always done, which is shovel weapons to the Israeli government, at billions and billions of dollars. Obama signed a 10-year MOU that I think was like $3.3 billion a year. And then above and beyond that, there was money for the Iron Dome missile defense system and other systems. I think the thinking there was, if you can make Israel feel secure through this defense infrastructure, then you could get them to get comfortable with a Palestinian state. That was obviously self-evidently a failed strategy. I think that it was probably pretty clear then, but obvious with the benefit of hindsight, that Bibi Netanyahu did not want a peace deal. He did not want a Palestinian state. He wanted to be able to tell the right wing of his coalition that he had prevented the creation of a Palestinian state, and that he is one of the most venal, corrupt, cynical, evil leaders on the world stage today. And he has done more damage to Israel, to Gaza, to the Palestinian people, to global security than most people ever could have imagined at the time. But I'm with you, it was a total failure.
Yeah, so look, in the case of Obama, I think that it's the money 98% of the time. But in the case of Obama, I take your point. I don't think that he was obsessed about that in the case of Israel. And you could prove in the pudding, because folks who are obsessed about it don't defy Israel as he did on the Iran deal, right? But I think it was more groupthink in that case. So that's why, that's why I wanted to press on that for one more sec here. Was there even ever a conversation about cutting off funding to Israel, or was that so unthinkable that that never even came up as an option?
I was not privy to one. Honestly, I think probably at the time it was seen as unthinkable. I mean, what was that? 2015, 2016, there was a US abstention at the UN on a resolution. I can't even remember what it was about creation of a Palestinian state that got everybody all worked up. But no, I mean, look, Jack, the thing that's wild about this is I think you and I think both agree with the majority of genocide scholars who say that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And I think you and I have been watching this issue for a very long time. And we've seen, when you see like 27 Democratic senators vote to cut off weapons to Israel, that is both woefully insufficient given what's happening on the ground, but also a sea change politically given where we were 5 years ago. Like Ben Rhodes and I ran around this J Street conference in 2019, and we were trying to get a bunch of Democrats to agree to condition US military assistance to Israel if that assistance was used to annex the West Bank, and they refused to do it. And most of them refused to do it. So here we are many years later. So I don't ever remember there being a conversation about cutting off weapons. There should have been. I wish that had been part of the conversation, but like just politically speaking, then it was not something I think you ever heard anyone talk about.
Yeah, we used to curse here too, but we're on 24-hour channels, and that's the rules. But I tend to get my points across strongly enough, I think, without cursing.
Yeah, you got the Riz. You make your point well.
Okay, I don't know about Riz, but thank you. Anyways, back to substance. Look, I want the audience to understand. Ben Rhodes was great on this. Okay, and so what Tommy's saying there is true. And it was important, and so. There's nuance in all of these discussions, but it does lead back to the media, because when we think about groupthink, part of that is set by the media, et cetera. So I am ecstatic about the destruction of mainstream media, and I know a lot of Democratic leadership. In that sense, again, I mean broader group, not just political leaders, but thought leaders, et cetera, think, no. Online media, boo, disinformation, misinformation. We can't control the message, we must control the message, right? And mainstream media is beautiful, controls the message perfectly. Israel's the greatest thing that ever happened. Who cares about the Palestinians and their kids? Let's, and oil companies getting subsidies. I've never heard of it. We're never gonna cover that. Congress gets money from all these PACs and then does exactly what those PACs want. Shh. So I think they've done great damage to this country, and I think we're much better off with online media. Not everyone agrees, obviously, so I'm curious what you think.
I think the destruction of both local and national mainstream media is catastrophic for this country. I think we need as many people as humanly possible digging into what politicians are doing, and we need it to be well funded. I am thrilled about the growth of independent media like you guys, like lots of folks online, on YouTube, they're doing great work. I know folks like you probably talk to the drop site guys all the time. Like, I love that companies like Crooked Media are sprouting up everywhere, but I'm just worried about the reduction in the number of journalists who are doing the tough stuff like FOIAs, like the constant source building, document requests, going to city council meetings. And so I really think it's a both and problem. I have a lot of criticisms of the mainstream media. In my last job, I used to fight with them. Now I rely on them to keep me informed. So I'm not where you are on this one.
Yeah, so I think that we got to get better clarification on what we mean by that, right? So if you're defending text like AP, Reuters, that are going out and doing investigative journalism, great, I love it. I want them to be twice as large, 4 times as large, right? There's great independent media that are mainstream adjacent. The Guardian is one of them, and then other folks who are online or independent, like Drop Site News and Intercept, et cetera. They're not mainstream media, but a lot of them are text and they're investigative journalism. Love it. Okay, we have to fight for real journalism in this country. But in my experience, no one has attacked progressives and populists more than the New York Times, CNN, and MSNBC. I think they're our top opponents. I think they lie about us 24/7. And I don't think they do real journalism. I think that and then what's super obnoxious about them is they love corporate rule, they love the status quo, and then they go, I'm objective. And since you are sticking up for the American people, you are not objective, you're biased, right? So what do you think?
Look, I think that news organizations are entities that are made up by people, right? The people do the work, the people manage them, the people run them. They are flawed, they have biases, they make mistakes. But I would rather more people are doing that kind of work than less. I mean, like for example, 60 Minutes, CBS 60 Minutes. I don't know if you have an opinion on them. Seeing that they, first of all, that corporate ownership has come in and pushed out their longtime senior producer and pushed them to stop doing tough journalism about Donald Trump. And now Barry Weiss might go over and be the kind of editorial overlord at CBS News. I think that's catastrophic. And on the New York Times, listen, I don't have all the scar tissue you have in terms of what they have or have not said about the left. I do think they do unbelievably important international coverage. Very few people are reporting on what's happening in Sudan on a weekly basis, or they're doing their best to dig into events in Gaza. I know they've made a lot of mistakes there, but I don't know. I think that big institutions like that can actually fund this stuff, it's important.
Yeah, so I think you're right on 60 Minutes. I think you're right that New York Times often does really good investigative reporting and international coverage, right? But two things can be true at the same time. But sure. On the other hand, if you ask them to care about Arab lives, it takes about 2 years for them to put their shoes on. And if you questioning Israel, it's 18 layers of editorial. Oh my God, what about the feelings of the poor Israelis? Their feelings are so important. New York Times is obsessed with the feelings of Israeli supporters, barely can muster up a year and a half into a genocide concern about Palestinian children that are being slaughtered by the Israelis, slaughtered. And I forget if it was Intercept or Drop Site. I think it was Intercept that did that great story. Whenever Muslims kill anyone, murder, terrorist. terrorist, New York Times writes, CNN says, right? Whenever it's Israel killing, well, a collateral damage, accidentally killed, but it's not a big deal, right? So the framing, oh, Bernie Sanders, radical. Okay, no, Joe Biden, it's a Joe Biden, Grace, Joe Biden, young dynamic, right? Come on.
Joe Biden, young dynamic actually made me laugh very hard. Listen, I hear you. I have great frustration with a lot of these outlets. I think that, look, it's funny. I was arguing with a friend today who was telling me that there's like all this anti-Israel bias in US press. And I was like, I just can't tell you how profoundly I disagree. It's just like, there's a lot of reporters who cover these issues who are in the IDF. I feel like if we were talking about like Serbia in Kosovo and 60,000 casualties and several month-long sieges multiple times and kids starving to death, like the international conversation would be about like no-fly zones and airstrikes, not like, how we should, manage Netanyahu's politics. So I hear where you're coming from.
All right, beautiful. That's a good start. Love this. Let's keep it going.
Anytime.
Yeah, and as we get, like, it's easy now, right?
I know.
Because like we've gotten past some of the groupthink, some of the propaganda, etc. We're now having real conversations, but we're really far from a primary, right? And so when the primary comes, that's when it'll get really interesting. And so we'll have to keep talking so that we have good enough relationship for all parts of the Democratic Party, so that we don't get into these things where folks say, no, you have to bow your head and the other side are evil, etc. So that's my sense of it.
I love that. I'm grateful to you for saying that. I can tell, just like, look, I can read between the lines that you have the same scar tissue that I have from like the 2016 and 2020 primaries. And for me, it's like, if you don't, often it's like, if you don't believe the furthest left position, it's because you're a bad person or some moral character flaw, or you don't care about such and such thing. And it's like, I think it would be great if we all just sort of depersonalize this stuff a little bit. Like, not everybody, just to the left or just to the right to you within the Democratic Party hates you. I think we're all kind of pulling the same direction. You're right, it's easy now and it gets really tough in the primaries, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, and if you're a little too far left or a little too far right within the Democratic Party, and that should get you canceled, I'm in a world of trouble, because I got people on the left who disagree. I got people on the right who disagree.
I know. You occupy an interesting space, and I like that.
All right, well, God bless. All right, everybody check out Tommy on Pod Save America, Pod Save the World. Go get his book, Democracy or Else. Actually, highly recommended within the TYT community.
Wow. Well, not the outcome we wanted, but nice of you to plug the thing still. We're more in the or else phase, I guess.
Yeah, well, here we are at or else. So there we go.
Not good.
All right, Tommy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.